Srila bheda-abheda-tattva Gosvami Maharaj. Secondly, I offer my pranam thousands of times to the lotus feet of my Param Gurudev, to Srila Prabhupada, and to all of our Sri Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru Parampara. And finally, I offer my pranam to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, Vanchakalpatarubhascha, Upasandubhyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. By the courses mercy of Sri Gauranga Varanga, now this is our 6th day of hearing from the 6 Sandarbhas of Srila Jiva Gosvami. So yesterday we completed our discussion for this festival honoring the disappearance of Srila Jiva Goswami. We completed the first 4 Sandarbhas: Tattva Sandarbha, Bhagavad Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha and Krishna Sandarbha, which are delineating the Sambandha Tattva. So now we come to the one Sandarbha, which is on the subject of bheda-abheda-tattva, the process, how a person can attain the goal of life. 11, 22, 34. So now, in the beginning of this Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Gosvami wants to establish the absolute necessity of bhakti as a path. That no other path is necessary. No other path actually has any independent power. And no other path is complete. Only bhakti is complete. Only bhakti is fully independent. Only bhakti brings the supreme auspiciousness and goal of life. And only bhakti has as its aim the consciousness of the complete absolute whole, Sri Krishna. So in all these ways, bhakti is supreme. It's complete, it has as its object the complete reality, and it is completely independent. And no other path is like that, no other path even has any power independently of that bhakti. So all of these things he will prove from directly and indirectly, giving many, many examples. But first, the necessity of bhakti. So he begins by saying, Paramatma Vaibhava, the living entity, is the splendor of Paramatma. But he has the tattva gyan samsar abhav. Tattva gyan means knowledge of the truth of God. And abhav means absence. In other words, in the jiva, there is an absence of awareness of God. What type of absence is it? So in Vaisheshik Darshan, there's analysis of different types of absence, abhav. So here Srila Jiva Goswami is saying Sansarga abhav. Sansarga means coexistence. When two things are coexisting. Now, the absence of coexistence between two things, this is what he's discussing. Because the Atma and the Tattva Gyan, awareness of God, are not coexisting. And in what way? It's very important. So samsara abhav, the absence of coexistence, we can say. You can also say for absence, the non-existence. The non-existence of coexistence. There are three types. One is called prag abhav. One is called pradvanks abhav. And one is called atyantik abhav. So prag abhav means an absence of coexistence which has no beginning, but it can come to an end. So, for example, there is some clay and the person makes it into a pot. And now these two things are coexisting. The clay and potness are together. Before it was made, that clay had no potness. It never before. So there was an absence of the coexistence between clay and pot. There was absence, which had no beginning. But once the pot was made, that absence came to an end. You understand? The absence of the coexistence of the two things, the clay and the pot, came to an end. So that is called Pragabhav. Prag means from before, or antecedent absence of the coexistence. The antecedent non-existence of coexistence. They were not coexisting before, since time with no beginning, and the absence of coexistence came to an end when it was made. Okay, that's called Prag-abhav. The antecedent non-existence of coexistence. Okay. Now, the second one is called Pradvangsa-bhav. Pradvangsa. That means Pradvangsa. Destruction. The absence coming by destruction. Now, if you have a part, there is a coexistence of the pot and the clay together. But if someone takes a hammer and smashes it, you can never put it back together. If you do, it will be another pot, not that one. So now, you have, when it's smashed, now you have the absence of coexistence, which has a beginning, but it doesn't have an end. Right? So, they were coexisting, and then you smashed it. Now the coexistence came, the absence of coexistence had a beginning. The absence of coexistence had a beginning when you broke it, but it will never end. See? So then, the next one is Atyantika-bhav. That is absolute non-existence of coexistence. Like flowers growing in the sky. Like the horns of a rabbit. Rabbits don't have horns. They will never have horns. So horns and rabbits, they never coexist. So that is Atyantika-bhav. So, Atyantik Samsara-bhav. So 3 types of Samsara-bhav, absence of coexistence. Now, when Srila Jiva Gosvami said that the Jiva has the tattva gyan, Samsara-bhav, then which type is he referring to? If it were the third one, Atyantik, that means the Jiva has no knowledge of God, and he can never ever have any knowledge of God ever. Right? So it can't be that one. Yeah. Now, but examine the Mubara. If it were the second one, Pradvangsa-bhav, then this would mean that he was fully aware of God. Like say someone in the spiritual world, fully aware of God, but then he forgot God completely. So he fell down. But the thing is, with the Pradvangsa-bhav, it has a beginning, but it has no end. That means that the Jivas must have been with God, and then they fell down, and they fall down forever, and they can never go. So this option is also not possible. So it must be the first option, Pragabhav, that the Jivas, from time with no beginning, have no awareness of God, but by the mercy of Sri Guru and by the appearance of Bhakti, then the absence of their awareness of God can come to an end, and when it does, then they are in that situation of God consciousness forever. So, Srila Jiva Goswami is saying that the abhav of tattva gyan of the Jiva is a prag-abhav. It means that he never knew the Supreme Lord. But that absence of awareness of Sri Krishna will come to an end when he attains Krishna consciousness. Now, from this very first anucheda of Bhakti Sandarbhas, something becomes abundantly clear, and that is that no one has fallen from Goloka Vrindavan. use this word samsara bhav? Because there's no category of the samsara bhav where you knew God, but then you didn't, but then you knew Him again. There's not a category. There's only you knew Him and then you didn't, or you didn't and then you knew Him, or you never knew Him, and you can never know Him. There's no category when you once knew Him, then you didn't know Him, and then later you can go back. So, the idea that the living entities are fallen from the spiritual world, which is quite common, is a misunderstanding, not supported by the teachings of our Goswamis. This is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly said to Srila Sanatana Goswami, Krishna Boli say Jiv Anadir Bahimukha. The living entity has forgotten Krishna. So then one must say, well, if he got, he must have known him before. So Mahaprabhu said, Anadir Bahimukha. He has been in the state of having his consciousness turned away. Bahimukha. Mukha means face and Bahim means outside. So that is a metaphorical, figurative way of saying his consciousness is turned away from God from a time anadi with no beginning. So then Srila Jiva Goswami Pad says, for the aparad of vimukata, that is for the offense of being averse to God, Maya is controlling him, and thus he is suffering in this material world. You can note this actually, that throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita, whenever Mahaprabhu is giving a teaching to Rupa Goswami or Sanatana Goswami, or is hearing from Brahmananda Rai, or Mahaprabhu is teaching Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Pankashananda Saraswati, and so on, you will find there in very simple vernacular Bengali language with a few Sanskrit verses, the exact presentation that Srila Jiva Goswami Pad is giving in the Sandarbhas. So we can say that from our transcendental point of view, Srila Jiva Goswami is thoroughly representing and presenting the entirety of Mahaprabhu's teachings. The scholars would say that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, studied the Sandarbhas and then put it into like a historical narrative. But really we should know that all of the knowledge of the Jiva Goswami Pad he has received from his Guru, Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and all were instructed directly by Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu instructed Gopal Bhatta Goswami when he stayed for 4 months of the rains, the Chaturmasya in Sri Lanka. So Mahaprabhu stayed such a long time there with Gopal Bhatta Goswami and instructed him. And then Gopal Bhatta Goswami collected all the important verses of Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures. And then he gave those notes to Jiva Goswami Pad. And on the instruction of Rupa and Sanatana, Jiva Goswami then took that collection and arranged them in a very systematic order and explained them according to Sambandha, the principles of Sambandha, Abheda, and Prayojan. So, first of all, the Jiva is Paramatma Vaibhava. He is manifest from Paramatma. So this Paramatma is not even in Goloka Vrindavan. Right? Paramatma does Lila of the Shrishti Lila related to the Tatastha Shakti and the Maya Shakti. The Jiva, he has Sansara Bhav, the beginningless absence of awareness of the Supreme Lord. And he continues in this state of absence of awareness. But everything has come from the Supreme Lord. So for the offense, the aparad of being vimukh, averse to the very source of his existence, so he is suffering in the material world. And now Srila Jiva Goswami Pad is presenting this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Jiva Goswami Pad presents in Bhakti Sandarbha, and it is the basis for the necessity of bhakti. It's a very important verse spoken by Sri Krishna to Buddha in the 11th canto. Atma parigyan mayo vivado hyastiti nastiti vedata nistaha vyata upi naivo parameta pungsam maya paravrita diyam swalokat. First, Atma means here the Supreme Lord, not the Jivatma. Refers to God. Atma. Then, Aparigyan means the lack of knowledge. Aparigyan, the lack of knowledge. The living entity who has a lack of knowledge of God. Atma Parigyan Mayo Vivado. He is engaged in argumentation. This is the Atma Parigyana Mayo Vivado. In other words, he's engaged in the argumentation which is devoid, which is lacking of knowledge of God. And what happens when the living entity is speculating, is making conjecture, what is true, what is real, and coming up with all different philosophies? Idealism, materialism, physicalism, phenomenology, existentialism, absurdism. There are so many philosophies. Nominalism. So, when he does this, when his consciousness is turned away from God, then hyastiti nastiti bheda-abheda-tattva. His argumentation goes hyastiti nastiti. Asti means the world is real, and nasti means the world is not real. In other words, he will, when we don't recognize that God is the one self-existent being, if you deny the self-existence of God, then you begin to doubt the existence of anything. If you don't give the state of self-existence to God, recognize His status, then you are bound to give that self-existent status to matter. And when you give the self-existent status to matter, then you think that everything is material, and my consciousness, my mind, my thoughts and feelings, they're all just a product of matter. So now your own soul doesn't exist when you give self-existence to matter. Otherwise, if you give self-existence to yourself, then you doubt whether the world exists. And then that becomes the subjective idealism or solipsism. I am the only thing that exists. It's all a projection of my consciousness. So either the person thinks the world is real, but the consciousness is not real, it's just a byproduct of matter, or he thinks, no, consciousness is the only thing that's real, and the world is a creation of the consciousness, like this. Hyastiti nastiti. So sometimes he may be on this side and argue on that side, and sometimes a person will be arguing on that side, they may change sides. And so this is the nature of, you can study the history of philosophy, and all the philosophers who don't accept God, they always fall into the trap of materialism, everything is physicalism, or they fall into the trap of anti-realism, everything is just a product of my consciousness. Especially people who take drugs, they usually fall on that side. It's all an illusion. It's all a figment of my imagination. So he is saying Vidata Nishtaha, that these arguments, they are very fixed in Bheda-artha. Vedanta Sutra teaches that Chara-chara Vyapasrayas Tustyat Tad Vyapadesho sutra means that everything, moving and non-moving, is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, every single word that we use to describe everything that we can experience is directly, actually, a name for God. And only secondarily refers to what we think of it is referring to in the conventional sense. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he experienced this after receiving Diksha from his Gurudev in Gaya. And when he came back to teach Sanskrit grammar in Navadvip, all he could explain is that all the verbal roots refer to Krishna, every noun, the nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, genitive, locative, vocative, and all the grammatical cases all refer to Krishna. All the adjectives refer to Krishna's qualities, like this. And his students thought that he was mad. No, but what had actually happened is, he'd undergone the karna-paid sanskar. When the sense of hearing is covered by material energy, then instead of understanding that the purport of every sound vibration is Krishna, then you have vidartha. Artha means meaning. There's one meaning, Krishna. And vida means shattered. In the state of illusion, that one single meaning of all sound, Shabda Brahma, which is the one absolute truth, Advaya Gyan Paratattva, by the influence of Maya, then there is a Maya Vyavadan. It impedes the reception of the sound, and the meaning is shattered into thousands of millions of meanings. And then with these broken meanings, Paritschinna Gyan, with all these broken pieces of meaning, then we are arguing. Does God exist or not exist? Do I exist? Do you exist? Is the world real or not real? This is yastiti nastiti bheda-abheda-tattva. The persons who have turned away from God, they engage continually in arguments where they cannot establish what exists or what doesn't exist, because these arguments are fixed in the shattered meaning of sound, not the actual meaning of all sound. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, all sound has two faces. Its transcendental face and its illusory face. So when the senses are covered by matter, because one has turned away from God and is now covered by gross and subtle bodies, then all sound presents its Mayic face, its illusory face. So that means even when a person reads the scripture, they only receive its Mayic face. They don't understand. This will become clear later in the class today, when Srila Jiva Gosvami is explaining the meaning of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, all the angles of bhakti. When he explains it, they're not what you think they are. But the reason why you may not understand the actual meaning of these words, hearing, chanting and remembering, why? Because we are reading, we are hearing and doing all of these things. But sound is showing its Mayic face. Because as long as our heart is actually turned away from Krishna, you can put on tilak and kantimala and sit and chant japa with your heart turned away from Krishna. It's entirely possible to do a drama like I'm a devotee, but the heart is turned away. Oh Krishna, I am suffering so much. So I am going to do some service, at least externally, because I want so many fulfillment of my worldly desires. And so the person is chanting, but he's not hearing the name of Krishna, but that person is thinking, where will I get money? Oh, I want a husband or a wife. What about my cat? What about my dog? My car? And the mind is going, turned away from Krishna in worldly things. So, Atma parajnana mayo vivado yastiti nastiti bheda nishta. But when a person is turned towards the Supreme Lord, that is, they do sharanagati, surrender. Then the sound vibration, there is karna bhed sanskar. In Vedic society, there are different samskars, rituals you have to go through. So when you're born, there's Navi Chetan sanskar, cutting the umbilical cord ceremony, name giving ceremony, first grain ceremony, writing the first letter ceremony, like that mundan ceremony, first time shaving the head. So one is called karna bhed sanskar, ear piercing. First time the ear is pierced. So this sanskar is figuratively means, in the deeper sense, karna bhed sanskar, that the guru through diksha puts transcendental sound, mantra, in the ear of the disciple, and because the disciple is surrendered, then that sound breaks through karna bhed, the covering of matter, and then he hears Shabda Brahma, and then he realizes the conclusion of Vedanta, tad vyapadesho bhaktas tad bhava bhavitvat, that the meaning of all words is Krishna. At that time, he is so much English. Anything he hears, it's all said talking about Krishna. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Rath Yatra, he was dancing in front of Lord Jagannath and singing one mundane love poetry. Ya Kaumara Hara Saiva Vasta. This is not even about Radhika or Gopis. Ostensibly, the outer meaning, according to Maya, is it's about one woman who went against Vedic culture by meeting very intimately with a boy before her marriage was arranged. But luckily, it ended up that her marriage was arranged to him later. So, but people were amazed. What is this? Why is Mahaprabhu singing this mundane poetry? Because for him it was not mundane. So, we want to come into that stage. Atma pragyanmayo vivado yastiti nastiti vidata nishta. Now, vyatopi. Api means although. Vyarta means useless. All this argument about what exists and what does not exist, if it's devoid of awareness of God, it goes on forever. The people will argue left and right, and this person will defeat this person, and he will defeat him, and he'll defeat him. See that Rupa Gosvami quotes a verse from the Vakyapadiya of Bhratri Hari in the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, saying that logic, which is independent of the scripture, cannot establish anything, because any idea established by one logician can always be refuted by a better logician, and he'll be refuted by a better logician, and it will go on and on like this. But the tarka, the logic that we accept, is called Shastra Sammat Tarka. The logic which agrees with the scripture is accepted. Shastra Sammat Brahma Gyan Poshakari Tarka. The logic which nourishes our understanding of the truth, which is, and it is in agreement with the scripture, this tarka is acceptable. So the Shastra Sammat Brahma Gyan Poshakari Tarka can be accepted. But otherwise, all this philosophical discussion is completely useless. Naivo parameta pungsam. But this is a very important point. Naivo parameta means the persons who have turned away from God and therefore have gone into the default psychological mode of arguing over this exists or does this not exist uselessly. Naivo parameta means they can never give it up. They can't stop. They can't stop. As long as your consciousness is turned away from God, you're stuck in this default mode of assumptions, projecting self-existence onto the world or onto your own consciousness. And by doing this, you get lost in a trap of revolving arguments forever. There's no way out. So, why is this going on? So Krishna says, Mataha parivrita diyam. That person is paravrita diyam. His consciousness is paravrita, rotated away, mataha, from me. Because his consciousness has turned away from me, this is why he's in this pitiable condition. So this is the meaning of the verse. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, he's using this verse as the initial foundation of Bhakti Sandarbha to establish the necessity of Bhakti, because it's showing that the root cause of being lost in endless different philosophies and never coming to a conclusion is because the soul is Maya Paravrita, as Krishna turned away from me. And therefore, the solution to receive all transcendental knowledge is to turn the consciousness towards Krishna. Because his fault is he's done this way, and he's trapped in this default endless argument. So therefore the solution must be to turn the awareness towards God. Now, there are many ways in which we can turn our awareness towards God. But the overall umbrella term for all the different ways by which we turn our attention towards God is called Bhakti Yoga. You see? So whether it's Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevana, Archanam, whatever the anger is, they all have something in common. They're different ways of taking our attention away from worldly physical things and directing it towards the Supreme Lord. This is all. And so, because if you follow the path of karma, fruitive activities, does it turn your attention towards God? No. If you follow the path of jnana, speculate, try to distinguish between matter and spirit, does it turn your attention towards God? If you follow the path of yoga, doing pranayama and everything, if you do it according to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, then you have to say Om, and you said Tasya Vachika Pranavaha, that the Pranava indicates Ishvara, God. And among the yams and niyams of yoga, one of them is Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. So there's a certain element of God awareness there, but it's limited towards Vishnu, Paramatma. So in karma, really, karma has to be done for Vishnu. So if karma, not just karma, but karma yoga, if it's done karma yoga, then there's an element of God's awareness of God in it. If jnana yoga, not jnana, but jnana yoga, if the word yoga is used, then it means there's some element of connection with God. But karma and jnana and yoga have some element of connection towards God, but it is Vishnu. And Vishnu is Paramatma, that is not complete. Whereas Bhakti is directed towards the complete reality, and therefore only Bhakti is the complete avideya, or the complete process. Okay? Very beautiful. As soon as you hear Mahaprabhu's teachings as presented by Srila Jiva Goswami, then you become very fixed. All doubts have gone away. What am I doing? This is what I'm doing. This is what I should be doing. This is the best path, highest path. No, the only path. There are no alternatives. Everything else is incomplete. So, now Bhakti Sandarbha is very big. So, we cannot go into all details, but I just want to pick out some very essential and important points, and also some fine points which are very often missed completely. Completely over there. So, one of the first points Srila Jiva Goswami makes about Bhakti is that Bhakti comes from sadhu sangha. It only comes from the association with those who have bhakti. Because bhakti is causeless. Because bhakti is causeless, then when I say if it's causeless, then how is it caused? It's caused by someone else who has bhakti. So because the bhakti in one person is the cause of the bhakti in another, so bhakti is the cause of bhakti, so it's causeless. Because bhakti, it is the cause of itself. So, this, to illustrate how bhakti only comes from sadhu sangha, he gives a very beautiful verse which was spoken by the devatas. This is from the Garbha Stuti. In this, you can pick up Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 31. When Krishna was in the womb of Devaki, let's say Vasudev Krishna was in the womb of Devaki, our Krishna's Vaibhav Prakash expansion was there. And the devatas came and they offered prayers while he was in the womb. That's called the Garbha Stuti. So one of the prayers, this Swayam Samuttirya Sujustaram Duman Bhavanavam Bhimam Adabrasoridaha Bhavat Padam Bora Navamattate Nidaya Yata Sadanugraho Bhavan. They prayed. Oh my Lord, you are Duman. Duman means, metaphorically, you are the sun. So the sun is Swayam Prakash, self-illuminating. And there's no darkness in the sun. So you are like that. You are self-existent, self-illuminating, and there's no Maya in you. So Swayam Sumuttira Sujustujam Duman means when a great devotee, an acharya, himself, Swayam himself, Samuttirya, he crosses over the ocean of material existence, which is Sudustaram. It's very difficult to cross over the ocean of material existence. Extremely difficult. Why? Bhavanavam. Bhavanavam means this Bhava Arnava, the ocean of material existence. Bhimam is a ferocious, terrifying, extremely fierce. Adabra Sauridaha. Those acharyas who cross over, they are Adabra Saurida, means they are friendly to every living being. And how is that friendship manifest? Bhavat Padamboru Navamattate. Those great acharyas cross over the ocean of material existence in one boat. That boat is the boat of your lotus feet, Krishna. Nidaya Yata Sadanugraho Bhavan. But Nidaya, they cross over, but they leave the boat on this side. This is how kind they are. You see? Let's say if there's a river and there's a boat there. So one person goes first, and you are following behind. He jumps in the boat, crosses over, gets out, and then leaves. And now you're stuck. But here the demigods are saying, no, the acharyas are so great. You follow them. They get into the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, that means bhakti, seva to Krishna. They cross over the ocean, but when they cross over, the boat is still on this side, and then you can get in also, you can cross behind them. So, and then the demigods address Krishna as Sadanugraha. So Sadanugraha Bhavan, you are Sadanugraha. Now, the implication here is that this is an explanation of the Sat Sampradaya, the eternal Guru Parampara. That when an acharya is in this world, he himself takes shelter of the boat of Sri Krishna's lotus feet. And his disciples and followers, they see how he is doing that. And they receive guidance and instruction from him. So even when he crosses over and Nitya Lila Pravishta. He goes to the eternal pastimes of the Supreme Lord. He has left them with all the impressions, the mantras, the teachings and everything. And they just have to follow it in their life. They can take also association of other sadhus to nourish them and support them. But he has left behind the boat, and then they become perfect, and they leave the boat. They cross over, but leaving the boat for the next generation. So this verse is the explanation of the Bhagavad Guru Parampara, the Sat Sampradaya, the eternal, transcendental chain, hierarchy of spiritual gurus. Now, Krishna has been addressed here as Sadanugraha. So Anugraha means mercy. And what does Sat mean? Sadanugraha, Sat, Anugraha. Here, Sat means the devotee, the sadhu. Sadhu means one who has a sambandha, a relationship with the Sadvastu, with the eternal truth, the eternal substance is called a sadhu. And Sadnoti Sadayati iti sadhu, who is doing sadhana and who causes you, who refines your practice and your conception that you can also do real sadhana, is called a sadhu. So, Sadanugraha. This is a samas, compound of two words. And it can be understood in three ways. First one, Sadanugraha Bhavan means you give mercy only to your devotee. So that Krishna does not give mercy to those who are not devotees. We discussed that. Why his heart is not melting? He has Dukha Gyan. Sorry, Paramatma has Dukha Gyan, but he has no Dukha Anubhav. Krishna is enjoying his Nikunjali Bihar. And Paramatma, he sees everything, but he has no Dukha Anubhav, so his heart will not melt. Whose heart will melt? Only the devotee. But the Supreme Lord's heart does melt when the devotee cries for him. Because the crying of the devotee is not the crying caused by Maya. It's a transcendental weeping. It's Swarup Shakti in his heart. So Sadanugraha means the Lord only gives mercy to his devotee. Because he only interacts with his Swarup Shakti. This is one meaning. Then the next meaning is Sadanugraha, because the Lord does not give mercy directly to the living entities. The mercy comes only through the devotee. So Sadanugraha means you only give your mercy through the devotee. So through the sad, through the devotee, Anugraha you give mercy. So Sadanugraha Bhavan. And then another meaning is Sadanugraha. The devotee is your mercy. Guru Krishna Rupaya Shastra Pramani, Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Karin Bhaktagani. Guru is one form of Krishna, but he's not a form of Krishna who plays a flute and dances in Rasalila. No, he's the form of Krishna, only he's the form through which Krishna gives Kripa. So Guru is called Krishna Kripa Sri Murti, the sacred embodiment of Krishna's mercy. So these are the three meanings of Sadanugraha Bhavan. Now, let's come to the actual angas of bhakti. Srila Jiva Gosvami begins with the explanation of Sharnapati. Sharnapati. Or we can say Sharnapati. He uses the word Sharnapati. It means surrender. Now he says something very astonishing. He said that a person, even without a guru, if he surrenders to God, he can get mukti, liberation. So any sincere person heard, oh, there's such a thing as God, and he has a feeling, and he prays, oh God, I surrender to you. Then he can be liberated. But Bhakti Sasti Sarupya Samipya Sarupai Katman Apyuta Diyamanam Agranati Benamat Sevanajana. Devotees don't want any kind of mukti. Even the impersonal mukti, if it becomes an impediment to service. So just to be liberated and go to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha or whatever, Ayodhya, Mathura, Dwarka, Golok, Gokul. The spiritual sky has so many destinations. So one may get a general type of liberation to Vaikuntha. But if a person is called, what Srila Jiva Goswami calls Vaishishya Lipsu. Lipsu means one who desires something. And Vaishishya means a particular destination. If a devotee in this world is Vaishishya Lipsu, desires of a particular destination, just like a Ram Bhakta might think, oh, I want to be like a monkey like Hanuman and serve Lord Ram in that way. Or maybe if I could be a Dasi of Sita Devi in Ayodhya. Or someone may think, I want to be in Dwarka or Mathura or Vrindavan. If they want to attain a special destination, then they must have a guru and receive initiation and be trained by him, by serving him, following him, hearing from him. Then the samskars will come and one will develop a particular kind of bhakti which corresponds to his bhakti. This is also very important. Srila Jiva Goswami also gives a breakdown of different levels of devotees. Kanishta, Madhyam and Uttam in Vaidhi Marg, Archan, the path of Archan. And he also gives a breakdown of Kanishta, then Madhyam Bhagavat and Uttam Bhagavat in Bhagavat Marg. Our Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke about the Bhagavat Guru Parampara, the Bhagavati Diksha, and Bhagavat Marg and all these things. And people, where did he get it from? He's made it up. It means that they either didn't read the Sandarbhas or they were reading but not paying attention. This is one of the great specialities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Many persons that think, what is he saying? This is all new. It's very foreign. It's very different to how I think of bhakti or how I practice bhakti or everyone is doing bhakti. His presence sometimes seems very shocking. But actually, he's just the embodiment of our Goswami's teachings fully. If you actually understand what our Goswami's taught, then you recognize Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's divine position. And if you don't really deeply understand what our Goswami taught, then you'll have a very low-kick, worldly, folksy, sentimental understanding of bhakti. And that is actually what predominates in the world. This, not Shuddha Bhakti. Shuddha Bhakti is very rare. So, we were discussing how levels of devotees. If you compare the levels of devotees in the Archan Marg and the Bhagavat Marg, the Bhagavat Marg, the three levels are much higher. It will say something like, one who wears a tilak and kantimala, then he's in this level. But then this will be nowhere in the Bhagavat Marg, practically. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, the Uttam Adhikari in Archan Marg is barely a Kanishta Adhikari in the Bhagavat Marg. So, there are different levels of devotees. Those devotees also have different moods and they have different amounts of power as well. So Srila Jiva Goswami describes that when we associate with a devotee, then we will get the mood just like that devotee. And how fast will we develop that mood? If we are if you're not surrendered, then who knows? But if a devotee is fully surrendered, then you will develop that mood corresponding to the amount of power that particular devotee has. So someone like Narad, he can just give a blessing to Magrari, a completely dark, evil, cruel hunter who's torturing animals and laughing. And he'll become a pure devotee just like that. So those who are Bhagavad Parshad, they have Prem like Narad, they can do. They don't always do, sometimes they give mantra. The person has to go away and do hard sadhana, like Dhruva Maharaj. But, so the very high level Bhagavad Parshad Deha Prapt, they can just in a moment do it. And then others, other general uttams and madhyams, according to their realization and according to their power, if one will follow them, one will gradually come up to their level also. So there is a correspondence, our progress, our bhav, our realization corresponds to the association that we have. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, he says that now among those who are Vaishishta Lipsu, desiring a particular goal, they are also divided into two. They are the Sadharan Sevakas, ordinary servants of Guru, and Vishesh Sevakas. The ordinary servant of Guru thinks there are 64 angas of bhakti, and one of them is Guru Seva. And the Vishesh Guru Sevak thinks, for me, there's only one anga of bhakti. Guru Seva. That is Angi. You know, there are two things, Angi and Anga. Like your body is Angi, and your arms and legs are Anga. So there is like the main portion, and then the parts that come out from it. So one who thinks that the Guru Seva is one Anga of the totality of Bhakti, he is a Sadharan Sevak, ordinary Sevak. But a Vishesh Sevak thinks, no, Guru Seva is Angi, that is the main thing. And my hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the deity, these are all Angas of my service to Guru Deva. So he is called the Vishesh Sevak. In the Upanishads it is said, Yasya Devi Pravakti Tata Devi Tata Gro Tasyaiti Katita Yata Pakashante Mahatmana, that if a person, as he has bhakti to the Supreme Lord, if he will have the same bhakti to his Guru, then all the secrets of the scripture will be revealed to him. So then Jiva Goswami said, yes, this is true. But for the Vishesh Sevak, the special servant of Gurudev, then he will serve according to one verse of the Padma Purana, spoken by Devahuti in the Padma Purana. Bhakti yata haro meisti tadvarista guru yadi mamasti tena satyena sandarshayatu me hari. She's praying to the Supreme Lord. Oh my Lord, as I have devotion to you, if I have more devotion to my Gurudev than to you, then may you appear before me at once. And then Supreme Lord appeared to him. So, who has more love for Gurudev, even to Krishna, he is a Vishesh Sevak. And they attain Krishna very fast, very, very good. So what a beautiful explanation of Guru Tattva Srila Jiva Goswami is giving. So then he gives another very beautiful explanation of Guru Tattva. When Sri Krishna was in Dwarka, and his old school friend from Gurukula, Sandipani Muni, Sudama Brahmin, came to visit him. So the two of them, they were reminiscing about their days at school. And Krishna was thinking, oh, in my life, whatever success I have, it was only by Guru's kripa. His Guru gave him the blessing. And because Krishna, he went to collect firewood. Guru Mata told him, can you collect some fire? And he went out, but there was a very big storm. And he stood under a tree, holding the wood on his head so it didn't go down in the wet. words will always be the essence of nectar, and they will be appreciated eternally. So we think that nowadays everyone is still reading the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years later. Why? Because of the blessing of Krishna's Guru. So Krishna was reminiscing about, in my life, whatever is there is only by Gurudev's Kripa. And so glorifying Guru Seva, Krishna said to Sudama Brahmin, Naham ija prajatibhyam tapasopasameynava susiyam savabhutatma guru susrusayayata. This verse, it has two meanings. One is related to a guru who is teaching karma, and the other is related to a guru who is teaching bhakti. So, in relation to the guru's teaching karma, Naham ija means Krishna is saying, I am not as pleased by the performance of yajna, sacrifices, which are done by grihastas. Grihastas, Brahmins especially, and all grihastas have to do yajna, but especially grihasta Brahmins, they have to do yajna every day. I am not so pleased by the performance of the duties of Varnashram Dharma by the grihastas. Prajatibhyam. Prajatibhyam means jati, birth. I am not as pleased by how do you become a brahmachari? You come to the ashram of Gurudev and you have to receive Upanayana Sanskar. And so that is your birth. Second birth. First birth is birth from your mother. Second birth is by Upanayana Sanskar. And third birth is Daiksha Janma, birth by Diksha, transcendental Diksha. So in karma, on the path of karma, if you want to study in the Gurukul, you have to receive a Upavit. So I am not so pleased by those who do the duties of brahmachari, tapasopas and mainava, or those who do the duties of a vanaprastha, austerity in the forest. Upasamenava is a sannyas, those who renounce everything. I am not so pleased that all these duties of Varnashram Dharma, Jushiyam Savabhutatma, as Guru Susrusayayata, a person who simply serves Gurudev. Susrusaya means that you hear and take it to heart and then serve according to that. So now the meaning according to the Guru of Bhakti is most incredible. Krishna said, I am not so much pleased. I am pleased, but not as much pleased by Naham ija. Ija here means worship. If a devotee is doing puja to the deities, very nicely. I'm pleased, but not as pleased. Pajatibhyam means receiving Diksha mantras. I am pleased, yes, but not as. Tapasa. Tapasa here means real tapasya is to concentrate your mind. So I'm not so pleased by those who do dhyan, meditate on me. Upasamenava, and those who have done attain complete peace and completely control the mind. That is not dhyan, but going into samadhi. In the commentary, Srila Swami, the original commentator, Bhava, the Tipika of Srila Swami and Srimad Bhagavatam, Jiva Swami is quoting. And he's saying that when dhyan goes really deep, and the devotee goes into samadhi, and he attains Krishna Prem, and he serves Krishna in Prem in his samadhi. And Krishna is saying, yeah, that's pleasing, but not so much pleasing as Guru Susrusayayata, when a person with affection serves their Gurudev. Srila Gurudev ki jai! So, now, let's come to the discussion of the angas of bhakti. So, we began with the discussion of Sharanapati, surrender. Then, surrender to the Supreme Lord through taking shelter of Guru and serving the spiritual master and the glories of that anger of bhakti. And then comes the first anger of bhakti, Shravana. So there, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad is describing Shravana. This is so important. Pratamam namna Shravanam Antkarnam Shuddhyatam Apeksham Shuddhej Antkarne Rupa Shravanina Tarudoyo Gita Bhavati Samyak Utite Cha Rupe Gunanam Spurnam Sampadite Tatasteshu Nama Rupa Guneshu Tat Parikareshu Sasamyak Spuriteshu Eva Lilanam Spuranam Shushtu Bhavatiti Abhipratya Sadhana Kram Likitaha Evam Kirtana Smaranayo Gyeyam. Bhakti Sandarbhas Anuched 256. We got to from Anuched 1 to 256. So you can imagine how many things I've missed out. But it's going systematically in this way. He's saying, Pratamam. First of all, in the beginning, Namna Shravanam. The ability to hear the name of Krishna. Antakarna Shuddhyatam Apeksham depends upon the Shuddhi, the purity of the Antakarna. Shuddhej Antakarane Rupa Savanaya Tad Udoyo Gyata Bhavati. And when the Antakaran, that means the Chitta, is a Shuddha, purified, then when one hears about the root of Krishna, then Tadudoyo Gyata Bhavati, the form of Krishna awakens in his heart. Samyak Udite, when that form of Krishna, very tasty and shocking, how beautiful he is, there are no words to describe. This form is manifest by Yogamaya. Yogamaya is the power to make the impossible possible, so he's impossibly beautiful. Yad Matli Lopaika Swayoga Mayabhayam Dashatagritham. Buddha said, this form of Krishna is manifested in this world. How? Yoga Maya is showing her power, impossible power, by exhibiting Krishna's form, which is very human-like. But that awakens in the heart. Samyak, when it's fully awakened, Charupe Gunanam Spurnam Sampadyate, then the awakening of Krishna's qualities. His softness, his sweetness, and all his 64 qualities. Tatasteshu Nama Rupa Guneshu. Then, when all of the qualities of Krishna have awakened, then there cannot be all of them, but many qualities, because the qualities are unlimited. Then, Tat Parikareshu Chasamyak Spuriteshu Sevalilanam. Then, one realizes his associates. And when the associates, one sees the beautiful forms of the associates and how they are serving him, then Leelanam Spurnam Shushtu Bhavati, then there is a very beautiful vision of Krishna's Leela. So, Sadhano Kramo Likita, in this way, the sadhan kram, the sequence of sadhana, has been written. Evam Kirtanasmaniro Gayam, and it should be understood that the kram is the same, because this is only about hearing. Now I'm saying it should be understood that this kram is the same for kirtan, and also the same for smarna. Now, bear in mind that the Sandarbhas are themselves in a sequence. So Srila Jiva Goswami, when he's describing the angas of bhakti, hearing, chanting and remembering, he's assuming that you've read the previous Sandarbhas, right? And you didn't forget what you have heard there from your Guru and pure Vaishnavas. So now, remember in 3 Sandarbhas ago, in Bhagavad Sandarbha, there was a description of Krishna's Swarup and how it's everywhere and how he manifests and how all these different Swarups are present in his one Swarup and all of these things. And then there was a description how his name and his ornaments and his associates are none different from his Swarup. So then in the section on how his name is not different from the Swarup, then all the qualities of the name were given. That is Van Manasa Gochara. The voice cannot touch it. The mind cannot touch it. That truth is Indriyati, it is beyond the senses. And so how does it manifest? And then all the verses are given by Jiva Gosvami. Shabda Brahma Sudurbodham Pranindriya Manomayam. That Shabda Brahma, it begins as a Nada Brahma and manifests. Then it begins to manifest as Om. And it is a movement of Aprakrita Pran. And then the Om begins to manifest the realization of Brahman, Paramatma, and then Bhagavan. Like this. So, when Rupa Goswami says Shravanam is the anger of bhakti, what he's actually saying is hearing the spot, the bursting within the heart of Shabda Brahman that was described in Bhagavad Sandarbhas. That is Shravanam. Understand? It doesn't mean ding dong, ding dong. Oh, I hate the doorbell ringing. Okay? So I heard the doorbell. And now I'm hearing Krishna's name. No, he's saying here, in the beginning, the hearing Krishna's name depends on the shuddhata of the antakara. Your heart, your chitta can be completely filthy. You can, even if you're very religious, but you just have bodily consciousness. You live a very good sattvic life, but you have some, even you can discriminate. But real high level of purity that comes from bhakti. In that low state, when you are contaminated, you can hear the doorbell, you can hear the bird sing, but this hearing is not this anger of bhakti. The anger of bhakti depends on when the antakaran is pure. The verse was quoted in Bhagavad Sandarbhas, Srinoti ya idam spotam shukta srote cha shunyam drik. When the senses, the power of hearing has become like in the state of sushupti. It's not functioning in relation to the material world. Then the sound manifests. And actually it's the Paramatma in the heart who hears it, and then he calls the soul and allows the soul to hear it. This is called Shravana. So unless the antakaran is pure, then one actually cannot hear Krishna's name. This is what he's saying. Pratamangam na shravana antakarana shuddhatam apeksham. It depends on purity of antakaran. Then, shuddhaja antakarane, when the antakaran is pure, rupa shravan, when the person hears, Vainam kwanantam aravinda dalaya taksham, kasturi tilakam lalata patale vakshastale kostupam, fulendiva rakantimindu vadanam, bahapidam natavaravapo. There are so many verses describing the Rupa of Krishna. When he hears it, then what happens? Tad udoy yogyata bhavati. The form manifests in his heart. Because of the spot dharma. The spot dharma of Shabda Brahma. The nature of Shabda Brahma to make a bursting of realization in the heart. So, now, he says, Samyag udite rupe. When the roop has awakened, then gunanam spuranam. The word spurti, spuranam, it's all the same roots. Then the qualities are sampadyate, they are accomplished, they are attained. Then the associates, samyak spuriteshu. When the associates have, samyak means fully, completely awakened, then the lila will manifest by hearing. So this spot, it's very important. If you didn't study carefully Nam Tattva from the Bhagavad Sandarbhas, then when it comes to hearing, and hearing begins. After this, Jiva Goswami will have a section, Nam Shravan, Rup Shravan, Gun Shravan, then he'll go on to discussing Kirtan, and he'll discuss Nam Kirtan, Rup Kirtan, Gun Kirtan, Lila, then he'll discuss Smaran. Nam Smaran, Rup Smaran, Gun Smaran, Lila Smaran, like this. So it's all Kram. Kram means sequence. Described by him here. And it all depends on understanding the spot dharma, which was described in Bhagavad Sandarbhas. That is actually bhakti. So then, a person may say, I am hearing and chanting and everything. I am hearing like hearing the doorbell ring. I am chanting, but no sport is coming. I am remembering. So then what is this? This is Anuchay 309. 309. Very important. Yatha Smarna Kirtana Pada Sevanam Mayam Upasanam Eva Agamukta Vidimayatva Vaishishtyapatyachanam iti avidiyate Tato Nariviktatvam. It means if someone does upasana, that is, in this sense, upasana means worship. Upa means near, and asa means sitting. So, to sit near, to be close to your Ishtadev. So, if someone is doing upasana, that is worship, consisting of smaran, remembrance, and kirtan, and rendering service, padasevana, if that upasana is executed according to the injunctions which are described in the Agama, that means Vaishnava Tantra, all the padatis which describe how to do archa and serve the deity. And now let's say it says, oh, you should before you wake up the deity, you should sing this verse. Then you wake up the deity, then you should offer this, and then you should say this verse, and so on. So he engaged in kirtan, and then smara everything according to the guidance of the scriptures. He said, then this kirtan and this smara and this pada sevana is actually archa. It's all archa, actually. This is so because when worship in the form of remembrance and singing is performed in adherence to scriptural injunctions, it is indistinguishable from the path of archa, the service of the deity in which there's a provenance of rules and regulations. So, for example, in Vaidhi Bhakti, in Archan Marg, when you wake up in the morning, then you have to sing Udgayati Nam Aravinda Lochanam Prajankananam Devam Aspitas Dwani. So you are remembering, oh, it's Vrindavan, the morning time, the gopis are singing the glories of lotus-eyed Krishna, they're churning the yogurt, and the sound is touching the sky and removing all inauspiciousness. So you're doing smaran, right? No. You're doing art. It's smaran, but this is not the anger of bhakti smaran. This is a sublim of the anger of bhakti called archana. It is said that some angers of bhakti have only one activity, and some angers of bhakti are a complex of many activities. So, for example, one anger of bhakti is if there's a procession of the deity in the street, you should follow behind the deity as he's going on procession. So this anger of bhakti has it's just one activity. You follow the deity. But an example of an anger of bhakti which is a complex of many activities is archa. Because putting on tilak is archa. Remembering Gayatri Mantra is archa. Dressing the deity is archa. Cleaning the temple is archa. Cooking is archa. You see? So, archa is such an anger which has a complex of activities. So hearing, chanting and remembering can be archa. So, but Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, these are specific angers of bhakti, and they're being described here in Bhakti Sandarbhas, what these angers actually are. So my Gurudev, sometimes he used to say, when you are doing bhajan, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, you are doing archa. But when I am doing archa, so I am doing bhajan. Because there's a difference. Because unless one is experiencing the spota dharma, he is doing archa. Even though it looks like chanting and remembering. It's archa. And if a pure devotee is serving the deity, it may look like archa. But he's absorbed in his swarupa as a manjari and serving Radha Krishna, making offerings not of jagatic vastu, of material objects, but serving with transcendental bhav, with no connection with the physical body or no identification with Maya. So it looks like archa, but that is bhajan. So you cannot judge exactly what an anger of bhakti is by outwardly seeing someone. So now, as mentioned, this crumb, this sequence of the awakening of the sport dharma by hearing, this is also applicable to kirtan. So only a person who has really heard and begun to realize the form of Krishna and his qualities, then he's really doing kirtan. So then he's doing kirtan and now Prabhu is appearing. And then the Nam is manifesting Rupa. And if this is not happening, then it's because of offense. Tabudani apurari toite prachu Krishna nama bij tahe nakorian kor. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami said, the name is like a seed, and the form and qualities, everything opens from it. And if this is not happening, then it means apurari toite prachu. You have many, many offenses. So then one is bound to follow Vaidhi Bhakti. And especially archa. If you become free from offenses gradually, following Vaidhi Bhakti, then you can actually do Sravanam, Kirtanam and Smaranam, along with the gradually manifestation of the Spot Dharma. But just because the Spot Dharma is there, he's still doing Vaidhi Bhakti. But he's doing the Vaidhi Bhakti of Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. But what many devotees are, they're thinking they're doing Raganuga Bhakti, they're not even doing Vaidhi Bhakti yet, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. They're doing some type of archa. And therefore, that's the definition of the Kanishta Adhikari. Archayam eva haraye puja yasadete natat bhakteshu chanyeshu savakta prakrita smritaha. The Prakrita Bhakta, the materialistic devotee, he has faith in archa. So you say, well, I don't do so much archa. I like doing kirtan and smaran and all these things. But actually this is archa. When in that Prakrit stage, if the spot dharma is not manifesting. So, natat bhakteshu chanyeshu, and the person does not know how to associate. He has faith in his guru, but he does not know how to associate with Vaishnavas. Because if a real Vaishnava will come along and say, well, you know, Kirtan and Sravan and Smaran depends on the spot dharma, then he'll what? No. And he'll argue. He doesn't know how to associate with actual pure devotees. Because he's Prakrita Bhakta. So Srila Prabhupada actually translates the word Prakrita Bhakta and he expands it. You can see Prabhupada's translation of this, it's very beautiful. He says, the Prakrita Bhakta or materialistic devotee who hasn't made a very deep and careful study of the scripture to discover what the actual standard of devotional service is. That's Prabhupada's translation of Prakrita Bhakta. For that verse, it's not there directly written in the verse, but because Srila Prabhupada understands perfectly and precisely what it means, his translation is so beautiful and exact. Now, as we discussed the stages of hearing, one who has gone through the stages of hearing can now go through the stages of kirtan. And as he's going through the stages of kirtan, this smaran is coming by itself. Because the Nam Kirtan and the Rup Kirtan is producing the spurti. And when Manasanusandanam, the definition of smaran is to investigate with the mind Krishna's form, qualities and pastimes. So you can't investigate your imagination. You can only investigate something that you're experiencing. Right? It's just like if if I say, oh, you should imagine my father. Okay? Now, what's in his right pocket? You cannot investigate the details of the imagination, right? Because it's imagination. So, Smaran is defined by Jiva Gosvami here in Bhakti Sandarbhas. Actually, the first thing he said about Smaran is that Shuddha Antakarnas Chet Smaranam Kuryat. If the Antakaran has been purified by Sharanapati, by surrender, and Guru Seva, and hearing and chanting, the Antakaran has become purified, then one can do Smaran. So the word here is Shuddha Antakaranas Chet. Chet means if, it's a condition. In other words, you, without fulfilling this condition, you cannot do Smaran. Then one says, oh, but that means I can't wake up in the morning and say, guys, and remember the gopis. No, you can do all that. But just understand that that's archa. Right? The condition is that you cannot do it doesn't mean that you can't recite these verses and remember. According to, actually that remembrance is not according to Vidvat Ruddhi. Vidvat Ruddhi. The actual meaning that sadhus understand. But according to Avidvat Ruddhi, the general understanding, you're doing Smaran. But really, by Vidvat Ruddhi, it is the Smaran which is part of Archa. So yeah, you can do it. Chant the verses. You can sing these verses describing the beauty of Krishna and Gopastri Parivestito Vijayate Gopala Chudamani. The crest jewel of cowherd boys is surrounded by many beautiful gopis. And they're smearing his body with sandalwood paste and his nose is decorated with the pole. Yes, sing these verses. And remember, to your heart's content you can do, but just understand that it's archa. Unless one is taking shelter in a sequence of the Spota Dharma. Okay, so he's saying, if the heart is purified, then you can do Smaran, meaning that if the heart isn't pure, you cannot do it. Not because someone's stopping you, you just ontologically, physically, metaphysically cannot do it. You have no capability to, because the chitta, when it's clean, it's a very highly sattvic, it has swachatva. That means clarity, and it has the quality Bhagavat Bimba Grahitva, the power to catch the reflection of the Lord. So when you chant, the form is reflected in the heart. And when you inspect it with your mind, Manas Anusandana, that's called Smarana. So, Srila Jiva Goswami says, Kram Sopam Rityaha, according to the methodology of following the steps, you should remember Nam, Rup, Gun, Parika, and now he introduces something that he didn't say before, Seva, and then Lila. When he described the hearing, he didn't say this, but when he describes Smaran, he places service, internal service, in between the realization of the associates and the realization of the Lila. And the reason is that when you meditate on the associates, and you become absorbed in them, then your chitta conforms to the nature of those associates. So in regard to Raganuga Bhakti, Srila Jiva Goswami, he only mentions 2 verses. In regard to, he does not say, how do you get your Siddha Deha? Okay, this is what you do. You go to a guru and say, please give me my Siddha Deha. And the guru says, yes, you are this kanji, you are this. He doesn't say, there's nothing. Jiva Goswami wrote 400,000 verses. And you can search all of it, you will not find anything that even remotely resembles Siddha Pranali. Anywhere. Just understand, the 6 Goswamis didn't do this. It doesn't mean that the process of Siddha Pranali is not bona fide. But it means there are 2 approaches to sadhana. And one, Swarup Damodar gave what is called the Antapanta, the inner path. to Rupa Goswami, to Raghunath Das Goswami. And that is what is coming in all the books of the 6 Goswamis. But he gave another path called the Bahipanta, the outer path, to Vakashra Pandit. And he gave this to Gopal Guru Goswami, and he gave it to Dhyana Chandra Goswami, and then Dhyana Chandra Goswami wrote it down in about 1650, about 110 years after Mahaprabhu had disappeared. After all the Goswamis had disappeared and written all of their books, then he wrote his Padati, and in that there is the mention of Ekadas Bhav, 11 sentiments. But still, how that path is practiced is not how people are practicing today. People come, they get Diksha, he's completely Konishta Adhikari, he's covered with anarthas, and the Guru is giving these 11 bhavs. Though the system 11 bhavs was there in the Bahipanta, coming through Vakashra Pandit. But it's not given like this. You can see in Jiva Dharma, Vijay Kurumar Brajnath, they first received Diksha. And after their Diksha, they even have darshan of the Panchatattva in Mayapur. And Mahaprabhu taking Mahaprasadam and Mother Sachi's feeding him. So they're very advanced. After that, their Guru acquaints them with different aspects, because they're already having the realization, and the Guru is just confirming and refining that realization. So it cannot be, it's like force feeding someone. If a baby's just been born, they can drink milk. You can, oh, would you like some peanuts? The baby will choke to death. So this is what happens when you try to force these higher things on someone who has not actually undergone the opening of the heart and the realization based on Spota Dharma. So the Spota Dharma reveals Nam, Rup, Gun, Parikar, and meditation on your own Swarup corresponds to that level, because your own Siddhadeya is among those Parikars. You understand? So that's the stage where it becomes relevant in that Bahipanta, the outer path. But you should know that our 6 Goswamis, they didn't do this at all. No one gave a Swarup to anyone or anything. They just went through the crown, and the way in which they received their Swarup, Jiva Goswami is explaining here in Bhakti Sandarbhas in 2 verses. So the first verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 1, verse 28. Kita pesa sprita ruddhaku diyam tamanusmaram sarambhabai yogina vindate tat surupatam. So this is a verse spoken by Narad Muni, and it's a type of logic which is very well known. Kita bringan nyai. Kita means a small worm called telkata, the oil stone worm. And the bringi means a wasp. So there was a stone with a small hole in it, and this worm was living in the hole. And a wasp came to eat him. But he was too big, he could not get in the hole. So the worm was trapped, and he just sees this big wasp going, like so loud. For him it's like, when they're digging the road, because the wasp is so big. And then all he can hear is, and this big wasp is going to kill him. And so then that worm, he's just completely avesh. He's absorbed in the bringi. And as a result of being absorbed in the bringi, he transforms and he himself turns into a bringi. So, this is the example Srila Jiva Goswami was giving. How do you get your Siddha Rup? By when you come up to the level of Parikar Smaran and your mind is absorbed in those associates, then by being absorbed in them, Krishnam Smaram Janam Chasya, then you become like one of them. And then you do Parikar Smaran, then Seva, you begin your service following under their guidance, and then Lila, entering into the Lila. Okay. Then the second verse he gives, we just, for completeness, there are so many wonderful things here that we can discuss, but we only have one class left for Priti Sandarbhas. We'll have to do another festival, one festival just for each Sandarbha. 6 festivals. So, the other verse he gives is 11th canto, Vairena Yamrapataya Shishupala Bondra Shalvada Yoga Tibilas Vilokanadye Jananta Akrita Diya Shayanasanado Tat Samyamapu Anorakta Diyam Punakim. Krishna speaking. And he says, Vairena Yamrapatitam, they were kings who had enmity towards Krishna, like Pondrak and Shalva, and they were always thinking about Krishna. Shalva, and how did they think about Krishna? Gati Vilas Vilokanadya, they were remembering how Krishna walks, how he smiles, how he glances. And they were meditating on that. Shayanasanadu. And they meditated on asana. When they were sitting down, they were meditating. When they went to sleep at night, they were meditating. When they were resting, they were thinking of Krishna all the time. And as a result of thinking of Krishna all the time, Akrita Diya, their chitta, Akrita, assumed the form just like Krishna. They were remembering Krishna in a four-arm form with his weapons. And so, by thinking of him all the time, their chitta became exactly like him. It took on the form. So, Tatsamyamapur. So, when they died, Tatsamyamapur, they got form just like they attained four-arm Vaikuntha form. And they Sarupya Mukti. So then, Anurakta Diyam Punakim. So, what to speak of a devotee who loves Krishna? So there are three considerations here. The first thing is that we just have to be absorbed by any means. Mana Krishna Niveshayat, by any means. One should try to be absorbed in Krishna with a relationship. So they have a relationship of enmity and fear. And by constantly remembering Krishna's form, they themselves attained their chitta became like his form. And then when they died, they attained a similar form. That's the first. Then the next consideration is, if someone is a devotee, if a devotee is thinking of Lord Narayan with love, then his chitta will become like that and he'll attain a four-arm form. Now, in Ragamarga, we don't want to have a form like Krishna. Right? So, Rupa Goswami said, Krishna Smaram Janam Jasya. So, when one realizes the parikaras, one should focus on the parikaras. And the same principle will happen, your chitta will transform and become like them. And then when you give up this life, you will have a form like those parikaras. This is the process of Raganuga Bhakti, as described by Srila Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbhas. Time is going on and I have to go and have a test. PCR test and everything, so I should stop, but I cannot. I'll just say one or two more things. In the description of Raganuga Bhakti, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, he describes how the eligibility for Raganuga Bhakti comes. He said that when the devotee is hearing about the associates of Krishna and how they're serving him, then the sadhaku's heart is like a spatik mani. That means a crystal. It becomes illuminated. Why? Because as he's hearing, then, now remember what hearing about Parikar Sravan really is. Parikar Sravan means hearing with spurti. So he's having a spurti in his heart as he's listening about, let's say, how Rupa Manjari is massaging the lotus feet of Radhika. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad said that the rag of that associate is like a moon. And just as rays, chandrikas, come from the moon, and if there's a crystal, the chandrika comes from the moon and touches it and it becomes shining. ullas. So in the same way, as the devotee is hearing about the parikar service, then a chandrika, a ray of the moon of their rag, touches the spatik mani of the devotee's heart, and he feels such joy. And when now he engages in hearing and chanting and remembering, inspired by that ullas, that joy, and he has taste in wanting to serve in the same way, then when that ruchi comes in that rag to serve in the same way, then that is called Raganuga Bhakti. When his bhakti is impelled by that rag. So Raganuga Bhakti isn't, I heard some things about Radha Krishna, I really liked it, it was totally fascinating and interesting, and I'm such an enthusiast. I have so much enthusiasm. I'm over-brimming with enthusiasm, I'm up to here with enthusiasm for this process, right? No, that's not the qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. It may be that by hearing and that enthusiasm comes, you have some preliminary greed, but the greed is not mature. The greed becomes mature when there's disport of nam, rup, gun, parikara. That is the gradual maturation of greed, and you see what it is you want. So that's described in Raghavatma Chandrika. Yataya tatma paribhrijite so. As the heart becomes cleansed, pasati vastu shukshmam, just like a person whose eye, they have a disease, but the doctor gives some Ayurvedic ointment, and slowly they can see fine things. So in the same way, yataya tatma paribhrijite so, pat gunakata sravanavidayanai, tata pasati vastu shukshmam. Chakshuryatai samprayoktam. In the same way, as the heart becomes cleansed, one begins to see the subtle things. So Vishnu Chakravarti quotes this in Raghavatma Chandrika, that you have to be cleansed up to the point where you see your ishtavastu, what it is you want. Then he says that tadrisha lob udbhute. Once greed has you had greed, interest from the beginning. But once the greed has matured up to the point of seeing what it is you want, then you can take up the sadhana of Raganuga Bhakti, the actual sadhana. So greed can begin from before, but actual Raganuga sadhana you cannot do until that greed has matured up to that stage of realization. So he says, Udbhute, at the time of the awakening, up to that point mentioned in the previous section. Because if he meant, as soon as your greed comes, you can do the sadhana, he would have said udbhave, when the greed comes, but he doesn't. He said udbhute. That means that the awakening has become complete, because it's in the past tense, in Sanskrit. So when your greed has completed its awakening, up to the realization of what it is you want, then you can take up the sadhana. So Srila Jiva Gosvami also even goes as far as to give the example that you may see how the parikar is serving, but you haven't developed a ruchi in it. Right? In other words, you are chanting and you realize up to that point and you start to see the parikars, but the chandrika did not come yet, which caused the ullas. So then he gives a prescription for that devotee, that at the time of remembering his Gayatri and everything, he should think of Krishna along with that associate. So he should think of Krishna along with the particular associate he wants to follow in all of his practices of Vaidhi Bhakti until that Chandrika comes, and then he gets a pure ruchi. Now, in another part of Bhakti Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami says, Nana Vikshepa Vati Ragatmik Bhakti Shaila Navijanati. Says, in the absence of such a ruchi, your mind will have vikshep. It will experience different types of distraction. And in that absence of ruchi and being distracted, then Ragatmik Bhakti Paripati Navijanati. You cannot understand the ways in which the associates are serving. So unless you understand the ways in which the associates are serving internally, how can you follow them? Because Raganuga Bhakti needs to follow the associates. So in the absence of ruchi, it's not possible. So these are some of the very important jewels. Keep them in your heart, so you have a clear understanding of where you are in bhakti and where you want to go, and the steps which are necessary to get there. Don't delude oneself, because if it's practiced imperfectly, then anyway by the mercy of Guru and Vaishnavas you can still gradually progress, but it will take longer. So try to understand everything clearly and follow bhakti as it's been prescribed by Srila Jiva Gosvami, Rupa Goswami and all of our great acharyas. Shri Bhakti Sandarbhas ki Jai, Jiva Goswami Pada ki Jai, Jai Gaura Premanande.